Hello, and welcome to the first episode of our brand new podcast, How Would You Run That? A Dungeons & Dragons podcast and ideas factory with me, Lucas Tomlinson.
And me, Jake Canner.
In this podcast, we're going to be discussing some aspect of Dungeons & Dragons. An encounter, setting, trap, puzzle, PC, NPC, monster, really anything. After revealing our own thoughts, we'll then build on each other's ideas, hopefully coming up with something that's nice to listen to, hopefully something that's a little bit creative, and at worst, just a little bit of fun. At the end of the episode, one of us will then reveal next week's topic to the other, giving us a week to prep and research said topic before we meet again and do it all over.
Sounds good.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's the premise. What do you think, Jake Canner?
Yeah, I'm super up for it. I think there's plenty of people out there running encounters straight out of the book that know what they're doing, and there's people like me who try and plan a fun time. So somewhere between the two is a nice opportunity to bounce ideas off other people who do this for fun. Well,
no, the point is we're the experts. We're the ones that know, and people are going to come to us.
Let me rephrase. We are the kings of D&D and are therefore imposing our will on the greater community.
Exactly, and people will listen to this, they'll soak it all up, they'll take the bits they like, change the bits they don't, and walk away with something to run in Dungeons & Dragons.
Sure.
Cool. So, as the self-proclaimed kings of Dungeons & Dragons, who are we? And how do we get into Dungeons & Dragons in the first place? Big questions.
Yeah, well, firstly, I am Jake, of immediate regret. I'm not a king of D&D. I've been playing for a few years now. First got into it actually off the back of playing Destiny, or Destiny 2 specifically, when it came out on PC. I had to leave you behind on your PlayStation, and I joined a clan I found on Reddit. I played for a while, got a bit bored of Destiny 2 actually, and then somebody in the chat one day said, "Hey, you want to play D&D?" And I was like, yeah. And then it turned out I'd already had a Roll20 account from about 3 years prior that I'd seemingly never used. So at some point the seed had been planted that I wanted to give this a go. Had a wonderful time. We got ourselves killed after about 6 months, which was upsetting, but we got some cool character art out of it. It's sitting on my wall up there. But off the back of the enjoyment I had from playing in someone else's fucked up campaign, I thought, I want to give this a go. I like thinking of things, and I put together a group of people that I knew across university and you, my oldest friend, and we've been going for a while. It's nearly a year, 6 months?
Over a year, surely.
Over a year. The bit that gets me is that creative storytelling moment. I dig that.
Yeah, I'm completely on board with that. I think for me as well. The amount of time I spend thinking about and planning Dungeons & Dragons sessions, or reading things online, or reading the source books that I've got, compared to the actual amount of time I spend playing Dungeons & Dragons, it's incredibly disproportionate.
That sounds like the true DM's curse.
Yeah, but it's great fun. It's so much fun that I thought, I like it so much, I want to do something else with it. I want more outlets for all this, time spent effectively alone, sat reading stuff or thinking about stuff,
Oh, hence the podcast. So now you've just got an opportunity to dribble your DM thoughts in an outlet that isn't necessarily your campaign.
It gives me another excuse on a weekly basis to sit down and think about playing Dungeons & Dragons, which I'm completely okay with.
Fair dues.
On that then, so yeah, you got me into Dungeons & Dragons in the first place by DMing the game that you just mentioned. I guess for me then, I got into Dungeons & Dragons by playing the game you just mentioned. We were playing for maybe 3 months before I totally and completely fell in love with the game.
It took you that long? Oh gosh, that's upsetting.
Well, yeah, we had maybe, 4 or 5 sessions most, and I decided this is bloody awesome, I want to do another one, and so I did exactly the same thing. I just grabbed some people that I knew in Sheffield that I could just, thought would be interested, could get to my house on a regular basis to sit around a table and set about it.
Yeah, the lament for me there is when you said sit around a table. I think I've played D&D around a table. Actually, I was about to say something very unfair. So I play in another group with some work colleagues, and we used to, at least once a month, go around to one of the houses, and it'd be a good old event. It would take, I think, we would go around for like 6 o'clock, we'd finish about 11, and of all that time, not enough of it was D&D, because some of it was catching up, some of it was ordering fish and chips, eating fish and chips, but the entire social aspect of the evening was quite good. Now, my game that I first started playing with the the Destiny people was entirely online. Some of them based over in the States, some in the UK, some in France. So we've had one like in-person session where the guys from the US came over to visit family in the UK, and we all gathered down together, and that was a cool one-time thing. Kind of weird. You're like meeting a bunch of strangers who you've been speaking to for 3 years but have literally never ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, hello, I am this pseudonym from the internet, but actually you can call me Jake now that you know my face. It's all super weird, but that was really cool. But this campaign that you're in, you play with me and the other folks from my uni days, we haven't met up in person once. It's all been entirely online since pre-COVID, and looks to be set that way for a disappointingly long time.
Oh, well, obviously, like with COVID, I think a lot of people are in the same boat. You know, if you did have the luxury of meeting in person, everything's now online. Everyone's on Roll20 and using Discord, and that's
it's really possibly
changed.
Something that we can add then, because most of what we've been doing has been online already. There are still people that are transitioning their games from in person to online, and maybe struggling with ways to construct their normal session in a way that works in your own room, hundreds of miles apart.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and I think it was a real blessing for me that I was part of your game before COVID hit, because you'd already found all the tools. I was familiar with them, and doing that transition. I had to show my players how to do it, because they were all brand new to D&D when we started our game.
Sure.
But it was easy enough, and we're all sort of talking about looking forward to getting back and playing in person again. But it's keeping us going. We're probably playing more often now online because it's just that little bit easier than having to drag yourself around after work or something.
There's something in that, the scheduling thing sort of disappears a little bit, depending on how people live their lives at home. The fact that you can just, we're playing D&D tonight. I'll see you at 7. I have to walk upstairs. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody has any plans anymore. There's no conflicts. I feel like everyone who did quizzes at the start of lockdown now, quizzes have died off. Everyone's realised that quizzes are just a terrible idea.
They're just a Zoom quiz, man. Oh, no. Thank you to everyone who organised them in my life at the very start. It was a wonderful excuse to see your faces on the internet, but mass Zoom chats do my nuts in.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. And this is from someone that used to go to a weekly pub quiz. Like pre-COVID, I used to enjoy that, but it was the social thing. You're not just sat around waiting for one person to talk.
No.
But I guess you've got the same thing in Dungeons & Dragons, but maybe a little bit less because there's fewer people.
Well, you know what? I don't know if this is the right segment to bring it up, but that's certainly something that...
It's our podcast. We can talk about anything we want.
Literally what we want whenever, and we'll get to other meats and potatoes later. Yeah. I guess anyone that's transitioning from table to online will have noticed this. The dynamic is really very different when you play online for that exact reason. You don't... Well, there's a few bits that sort of culminate into a core reason, I suppose. When you're not sitting around the table, you don't get those visual cues from each other, because not everyone has access to either a webcam or a suitable webcam, or a good enough internet connection that you can communicate in completely real time. Yep. So you don't get any of those subtle nods or little side conversations around the back of the table where your rogue and barbarian are discussing how they're going to sneak into this place while the other one causes a distraction out the front and knocks something over before revealing this great master plan fully formed to the DM and the rest of the group to great amusement. Because we're all talking into microphones, we are all the same volume. To some degree, you can tweak that in Discord and similar, but some people have better setup than others. And I'm sure if you've had it on Zoom quizzes, there's always some fucker who's the loudest, and they dominate the conversation.
It's the classic British approach to it. Though. It's like, oh, is someone unmuted? Can you mute your mic while you're not talking? Because there's an echo. Oh, is it maybe you, person X? And it is because they've got the little icon that highlights. Yeah. No, it's bold, isn't it? It's on Teams anyway. But you know who it is, but they don't know it's them for some reason.
Oh, someone echoing literal fucking bullshit all night? Yes, mute.
To come back to that sort of side conversations thing, I know there's something that and it's something I've stolen from your game as well. You have a separate Discord chat to pull people into when you want to chat about something, and I think that's great. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Well, really I kind of nicked it a little bit off a combination of my Destiny DM and Critical Role. Mercer. The whole idea,
it's the same
and
thing.
he's not the only one that does it, I'm sure, but yeah, he's the main D&D podcast I've listened to, and he'd have this thing about if you're telling someone a secret, you tell them a bloody secret, and to do it in podcast form was quite exciting because he'd take them away from the table, whisper in their ear, and I was listening to it as a podcast. I wasn't watching the video, so I didn't get any of the visual side of it, and then hearing the other players just filling that gap with chatter and stuff, but there's always that sort of mystery around the fact that the DM's telling that person somebody or something interesting or new, and I don't know if I'm going to get to find that out. So yeah, we've replicated that in Discord by having a secrets channel where only I as DM have the power to move people in and out of it, and I sometimes drag people in there for fun.
Yeah, fun. It is fun. It is fun. It's like everyone else sort of sat around waiting like, ooh, secret chat, and then
I'm assuming that's what's happening behind my back because I've got this little head cannon of everyone going, a secret, I wonder what it could be. And you're probably all just shooting the shit, but in my head.
Like earlier this week when we were playing, we were talking about sea shanties while we were waiting.
I mean, fair enough. That is very en vogue.
Well, we were at the docks. We were about to board a vessel and go hunt pirates. But yes, we are getting a bit off topic. So the structure of the podcast is going to be rubbish and chit chat to start with, introduction, talk about whatever the topic is for that week. At the end, we're going to reveal the topic for the following week. So given that there's been no previous week yet, we haven't got a topic for this week.
Sure. So you're saying speedrunners skip the first 10 minutes.
Exactly. So skip this one until just listen to the last 5 minutes, find out what the next one's about, and then go on, and it should be fine. So that's the format. I mentioned already what the point of the podcast is, but I guess just to sort of recap, like I want this to be jolly good fun, and I want to sit down and talk to you about something that I really like, and I think that's just going to be fun. Like, but it's entirely selfish. This is a self-serving podcast just for me.
And I'm along for the ride.
Cool. That's the primary objective.
Yeah.
Secondary objective. Not as important anywhere near as the first one, but secondary objective. Yeah. It might be useful for people who play Dungeons & Dragons or DM Dungeons & Dragons to give them ideas on what they could do, maybe a different perspective on what could be quite a, stereotypical encounter or environment or, using a class in a way that you wouldn't have thought about maybe just because it's somebody else's approach to it. Yeah.
And even from a player's perspective, there's some value in that, knowing of here's how a DM may have constructed this encounter, therefore I could approach it in this manner as a player.
Absolutely.
And maybe get something more out of it and make it as much fun for your DM as it is for the player.
Absolutely. Like, it's one of those things. If you play Dungeons & Dragons, if you know about Dungeons & Dragons, you might know, if you're like me anyway, this kind of monster has that armor class or has this, you sort of know a bit about what's going to come up. So having some variation on that being more of a possibility, fantastic. Keep people on their toes, give DM a chance to maybe be a bit more fast and loose with the rules. Big smirk. Yeah, well, we all do it. It's like, should you fluff rolls? It's like, well, absolutely you should fluff rolls. Fluffing rolls is core to Dungeons & Dragons. You can't just, murder them every time. Right. Test number 1. Jake, how would you run this? An encounter on the road with a cheese salesman.
A cheese salesman?
A salesman of cheese.
Okay, so I'm going to scribble that down. We've got road, and we've got cheese salesman.
So we're thinking, there's a long road between City X and City Y.
Yep.
The road winds and has long straight bits. There is grass either side of the road. The party's on foot because they are saving gold, because they don't want to spend any money on horses or transportation of any kind. As they're walking in the same direction, slowly approaching and catching up with them because they have an oxen pulling the cart, is a cheese salesman.
Okay.
Is that enough of a lead up?
Yeah, for sure. So I think first and foremost, because I'm bringing the cheese salesman into the encounter, the onus is on me to make them drive an interaction, because what you could quite easily do is say, this person has appeared, and leave it to your party to decide whether to interact first. You think you walk down the street, you walk past people all the time, and yet you're not going to speak to them because we're British and we don't do that.
Absolutely.
However, this is D&D, so you want to, if you've put someone in there, you want to use them for something. So I would probably have them approach that party in the first instance and either make a plea for help if I thought they haven't fought anything in a while, or try and sell them something. And then it would be, in my mind, depending on how the party reacts to that sales pitch, whether it would be legitimately just a block of cheese and it's something to maybe lean towards an RP style character. Some people like to RP, some people like to hit stuff. And just let them play that out because it's fun, and now they've got the random item in their pocket and they've got some cheese. Cool. Or it might be something more sinister. If I thought it would be fun to fuck with them a little bit, I might make the cheese a mind control device and have some sort of skill check in there to see if they either detect a poison or resist the charms of something. And then if it gets really silly, this is cheese, we've got rats, he's going to be the Pied Piper, why not? And he's going to take all of his, everyone he feeds the cheese to becomes under his spell, and his desire is to become a slave trader on the way to the next city, collecting people as he goes.
Fantastic. Okay, so we've got 3 distinct thoughts then. We've got regular cheese guy, just going past, can sell you some cheese. You know, and I think that's probably the extent of it. I mean, you could probably give him some sort of interesting backstory or,
this would actually, I think in our campaign, this would be a wonderful opportunity to leverage the fact that one of our players thought he was being funny by saying he was lactose intolerant.
Yes. So what, the cheese is just so damn gorgeous, anyone that tries it just, is baffled by this delightful cheese and he just can't enjoy it.
Well, I think what I'd be leading on in that moment is that the player himself would have forgotten that he'd said that, because it was sort of like as a throw. In my campaigns, I ask for your normal things. So why is your character in existence? What do they want to do in life? Why are they in this world? And why are they going on an adventure? Why don't they just go to work like normal people? And then to try and add some, to up the stakes on occasion, as I said for you, I picked this up from Reddit and the GM binder, the idea of knife theory. Give me some knives with which to stab you.
Yeah.
And so in our campaign, one of the knives, there are some really nicely considered things. And then you get towards the end of the list, you can see people are being a bit silly, a bit throwaway. So one of them is, my Asimar is lactose intolerant. And I was like, lock that away. Yep. That's funny. And there's got no reason to come up in your normal D&D mechanic. It's not a combat mechanic. It's barely anything to do with RP or social encounters. So how am I ever going to work that in? You've just given me a cheese salesman.
You wouldn't want to, make that a negative character trait, Constitution saves every 5 minutes or anything stupid.
Exactly. It should just be every now and again for flavour, funny, a little reminder to the fact that we made a joke 6 months ago.
Yeah, and it makes the character more real by having more bits to them. Otherwise, they're just a talk and hit machine.
Exactly, and I don't think every trait has to be either a superpower or a complete crippling something. I need a noun for a crippling hindrance, perhaps. Yeah, it doesn't have to be the be all and end all. You don't all have to. You can have something quite beige about your character, and that's still all right.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree.
Well, let's bring it back around then. So you're on your cheese salesman. How would you approach that? I've got 3 sort of different spools, and one of them's a bit more well formed than the rest because I was thinking about it live, and it's the one that interested me the most. So, what's your gut?
I think. So we talked when I did the little brief introduction. So it's between 2 cities. I reckon the cheese selling is a front, and I think that my cheese person probably looks a bit too fancy to be peddling cheese between cities. So they've got a wagon. There's some cheese in there, but I reckon if he was, he'd offer them some cheeses. He wouldn't go into any details if he would start interacting with the party, and sort of just in regular conversation, try and give it away a bit that he's not so knowledgeable. And then if they try and pick away at that, I don't know, maybe some sort of insight check or perception check to realise that either there's a fake bottom in the cheese wagon bit at the back, or that he really doesn't seem to appreciate cheeses correctly. He hands them some kind of cheese and calls it something else. I'd have to plan that bit. I'm not such an expert on cheeses, but maybe that. And he's smuggling, I don't know, let's say some sort of banned materials or magic weapons or something. Something that if the party found out about, it's a lead into a different story. Why is he smuggling these things? Is it because he's working for a big bad guy or a group of, bandits or something? I mean, so bandits the fallback. Illegal activities.
What you've got there that's quite nice, though, is that you've said, okay, so this guy's got some shit in his wagon. All of a sudden, that is the prize, isn't it? That's the payoff. If they're smuggling banned goods or magic items or something of value, yeah, of course, your party might decide to go into the the who's the boss, follow the money sort of scheme, or they might just think there's some cool magic shit. We're going to kill you and take it, and then you've got an opportunity to give them something.
Yes, and that's what I'm thinking. But I quite like it in situations like that, not to make it obvious. If you gave the game away and he's obviously evil, he's a nasty guy, fuck it. You rob it, you kill him, you take all his stuff, you nick his cheeses and oxen, you ride onto the city. But if they find out he's he's not who he says he is and he's trying to hide something, I find that players often try and think about what it actually is. They'll make up things, and often it'll fit better to the story than anything I've planned. So if he isn't who he says he is and he's trying to cover who he is, why is he doing that? Is it because he's related to a shopkeeper who we spoke to in the last city who seemed a bit dodgy? And then all of a sudden there's like this conspiracy comes out from just what the players are talking about, and they do it for you.
There's a bit then that I think is it's probably the biggest hurdle in that sort of encounter. So let's say you've gone with your plan, you've got your cheese peddler coming down the street, but he's running a front.
Yeah.
There would be then no reason for that person to approach the party unless he thought they might be willing participants for whatever he's fronting for. So how do you begin that encounter? How do you get them hooked in the first place? Because in this instance, your cheesemonger's probably going to have to say something which kind of goes counter to the clandestine nature of the thing. Yeah,
so there's a few ways I can see you could do that. So either firstly, if you know the passive perceptions of people in your party, you could easily, like I've got 2 passive perception 15s in my party, and they see pretty much everything that happens. Like, yeah, so you notice as the as he sort of like, you describe how he runs up, like slowly approaches from behind. He's gaining distance because of the oxen that's pulling his cart. As he passes you, you notice that he's sweating and sort of side-eyeing you nervously as he goes past, or something that. Or you could, if you don't, you could just have a wheel fall off the wagon. And then you could even link that to it being overladen with goods. It's too heavy. And an intelligence check of some sort would determine that the weight of the cheese in the back shouldn't have broken that, that axle.
That's really good. That's the sort of thing that, actually, I struggle with that quite a bit, because for all the joy you can lock behind a social encounter, I find trying to plan a hook probably the hardest thing. And I think that's probably because I'm trying to tailor it to groups more, or because I don't want to make it seem contrived. But when you explain it, it isn't. And ultimately, if you're trying to deliver a game, events have to occur. Otherwise, you've just woken up one day in Fantasyland and you've gone to your fantasy job, and then you go to fantasy bed. There's nothing actually to do.
I mean, I think with my party, like, the number of times my party have talked with someone who has lied to them, and I've, done the voice, and he's a bit mysterious, talking about things quite vaguely. And they don't do an insight check. They just believe him straight up. It's like everyone they talk to is telling the truth. And then that one time they're not sure, it's like, the honest tailor or something. Like, he's just a regular guy. Why would he lie?
Yeah.
And I've tried to use, like, sort of, try and give it away in sort of like the evilness of a character, and they've just not got it. So I feel like there does need to be some action, but if they're in the wrong place at the wrong time, or they're the place where the thing happens, and if you do it too much, it's maybe too coincidental that they're always at the place. But it's Dungeons and Dragons. Like, everyone knows it's not some great novel or film or something that's going to go down the ages. In 3 sessions' time, they're not going to remember. Oh yes, it's because the wheel broke on the cheese wagon. It's like, no, we found the cheese wagon with the goods in the back. That's what they're going to take away.
So, do you reckon then, on like a more of a how would you run this sort of thing then, if you're trying to you're trying to convey a personality or some ulterior motive, that's got to be easier when you're in physical proximity to someone. You can change your body language. You've got the subtlety of volume dynamics and just all those sort of unknown, intentional, but the sort of little cues that people pick up on that tells the story of, oh, this is how this person is. Whereas online, especially no video, I think that is a very difficult thing to get across without like narrating it, without describing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is difficult, because if you are narrating sort of like, oh yes, raises his eyebrows slightly as he talks to you. You know, it's like they're like, oh well, why is he doing that?
Yeah.
You know, it's you can't describe everything to the same level of detail. So the things you do describe to the party stand out, and there is a balance to it. And I've tried a few times to sort of throw out just some mundane some things to try and, you know, so they're not questioning every little thing that is detailed. But then ultimately they're disappointed if that doesn't turn out to be anything, and it puts them off doing the same later. Yeah,
that's a good point. I know that's something I've tried to do, is like balance the mundane with the extraordinary to much the same effect. You know, sometimes that door just opens into a store cupboard and there's nothing in there, and that's okay.
I want to talk about doors because I ran a dungeon and it was like an underground temple sunken away in dusty books and ruins and lots of undead. And I trapped one of the doors right at the start. Right. And it just meant that for every single door in the dungeon, the party wanted to investigate it to see if it was trapped.
Yeah.
And this was a huge dungeon. I built it on, can't remember what I built it in, but it was just massive, sprawling with like 5 levels and like different ways up, like stairs up and down. And like, it's the first dungeon I ever created myself, and it was far too big. Yeah. And there was just a whole heap of doors, and they checked every one. And that's fine. Like, they're allowed to do that, but we must have spent about 6 months of real time in that dungeon. And I don't know how much of that was taken up just by checking doors.
Oh man, you should take it back. I think what was it, like the first version of D&D, or some of the earlier ones, the 10-foot pole or 12-foot pole was a legitimate adventuring item, and it was just for setting traps off. Just for smacking shit that might explode.
Oh, I love it. That's great.
No, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, you think you want to set a bit of a precedent that this is a dangerous place. You think, okay, well, if this barrow is hiding some important thing, then sure, you're going to trap the first door, because in the same way you lock your front door at home, you're trying to deter people from entering. You don't lock your internal doors, because when you're in, you're in.
Yes.
And if you bypass the initial trap, which should be good enough to deter all ne'er-do-wells as far as your dungeon creator is concerned, once you're inside, you must be a good guy. So why would you trap everything?
That is the logic that I was lacking when I built this dungeon.
I think it sounds like you had it, because you didn't trap the internal doors.
I did trap some of them.
But I think that makes a better dungeon,
I thought, like, I want to build a dungeon and I want to completely randomize it. So from the Player's Handbook or the Dungeon Master Guide, I think it's Dungeon Master Guide, there's a section on, in fact, it might even be Xanthar's Guide to Everything. There's a section on how to generate a random dungeon. And I tried to use this, and it's a lot of dice rolling and how many exits to a room and what shape is the room.
Oh, I've got it for you. Page 290 in your Dungeon Master's Guide. Random dungeons.
Exactly. And I used this, and it became this horrible, massive thing. And like, I thought, well, it's in a source book. It must be absolutely right. Like this is a normal dungeon. But I must have done something wrong, because every room had like 3 or 4 doors that came off it, and then corridors, and then other rooms, and then more doors, and it just kept going and going. And I had to, like, at one point I just thought, I can't keep building dungeon, it has to end somewhere. But yes, Cheesemaker.
Yeah, go on. So that was your cut. Do you have any other ways you'd take that? What if you had brought along your Cheesemaker and your party didn't take the bait?
Okay, I would, so I got the broken down bit nailed. Let's say they ignored him, or let's say that first. Let's say they ignored him. So the party ignores him.
That guy with a shit trolley.
Right. So they carry on. They're on the way. I'd say then when they do get to the city, they come across him again. So every party goes to an inn straight away, right?
Yep.
It seems. It makes sense, like, where are you going to sleep tonight? And I don't know. In my games, I always feel like they always get there just as evening starts setting to give them a chance to rest up and stuff. I'd say then, the next day, the morning, as they're leaving, the Cheesemaker wheels past again. So he just someone else has stopped, help him repair it. He's in a grumpy mood, and he just you see him ride across, and you can notice very easily that it's the same Cheesemaker as yesterday. And I think dropping it in like that a second time sort of gives the players more of a hint that maybe there's something going on.
You've got an option there as well. You've got the opportunity for your Cheesemaker to call him out for not helping him on the side of the road.
Yes.
If you wanted to take a more active role in making this encounter happen. If that was what you'd planned for that day and you've got literally nothing else to draw on, if it's happening, that doesn't feel like too artificial a way. Yeah.
But, I think these things it's easy enough to bring things back to players. Like, even if they decided not to go to the city in the end, maybe you just put that cheesemaker on the back burner and bring him back in 6 or 7 sessions time somewhere else, because they'll remember it's the cheesemaker, and then they'll get suspicious.
Like, why are you taking cheese everywhere?
Yeah. This is a lactose intolerant village. Why are you bringing cheese?
There are no cows in our fantasy setting. How have you made cheese?
Those cheeses are the same cheese as what you had last time. Why have you not got different cheeses?
Did you have a second encounter?
Second encounter? I had a second thing, not an encounter.
Sorry, a second thing.
A second thing. The second thing. So, if that's
I'm assuming you're done with Cheesemaker, but there's some good content there.
Well, you've not told me about your other 2 cheesemakers. So you had the regular guy cheesemaker. You had the middle cheesemaker that I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember him either, because the Pied Piper one was way more fun.
Pied Piper one was a lot more fun. Yeah. Let's sack off the middle guy. Let's go straight for the the pudding.
Well, go on then. I'll tell you about Pied Piper Cheesemaker. So this would be a person who would be an active social encounter, and by that I mean they would go out of their way to engage with the party, almost to the point of belligerence, to the point of irritation. So even if the party tried to brush them off once or twice, I think this person would be persistent, and that's because I would give them like simple motivation.
I can tell you straight away how you can get over that. You just have them piping straight away. They hear the pipes, coming up behind them.
You know what I'd do with that? So that's the funny thing. If we get to workshop and you build off silly ideas and it gets even sillier, this guy would be using the pipes in the same way an ice cream van does the jingle going around town. So it's like, that is the Cheesemaker tune. I don't know.
The Cheesemaker, here comes the Cheesemaker.
I was thinking Careless Whisper or something, but yeah, he's playing something recognisable, and so I don't know why I know that in Fantasy George Michael's there playing his pipes.
Well, he's Michael George. He's the Pied Piper Michael George.
Outstanding. Exactly. There's the hook. Known to be charming. But yeah, because they would have a goal, it would be much easier for me to roll around the creativity of that character, because I knew that they would have a motivation. That motivation would be, please eat my cheese, please fail the check that I don't know you're going to take because you're an adventurer, not just some level 1 commoner, and then get in my wagon because I'm going to take you somewhere and sell you.
Okay.
And so that would be, because they have that goal, I think I would be able to just go wide and always bring it back to that single plan.
Okay, so with that then, if you're getting hopefully everyone to taste is it the cheese that knocks them out, or are you going to pipe them out? Like, is it like a sleep spell or something?
Well, I think I'd want it to be the cheese.
Okay.
This is probably like smell my cheese, punch you in the face moment.
So the risk there is then, what if one of the characters is lactose intolerant and doesn't want to eat the cheese?
Well, the cheese person doesn't know that. So I don't think that's a problem for their schemes to come undone because of some underlying condition, as it were, of the party makeup. It's the same idea of someone blatantly evil going up to a group of paladins who happen to be in their civvy clothes that day and like, hey, do you want to join a cult? And they go, no, smite.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Right. So in his mind, he's seen some people out on the street or on this long country road, whatever, and he thinks, I'm going to get some of them knocked out by eating the cheese. If they resist, I can take them on because I'm a powerful bad guy.
And I've got my fucking zombie minions in the back of my car that I can bring out. If
he's got a secret compartment with some bodies in there as well, then?
Why not? I mean, if it comes to blows, if it looks like an encounter's on, some sort of fight, like, if you are a weak creature, you don't encounter a bunch of adventurers without a plan.
Cool. Okay, right, so I'm on board. You've got me. So Mr. Michael George is coming down, he's got his car, he's got some bodies in the bottom. Has he got the rats as well?
He doesn't do rats.
No, not at all.
No, so I'm leaning on the Pied Piper trope in that is the sort of thing. There's music involved, there's a charm, and I don't know, maybe the rat thing falls by the wayside. It gets a bit congested at that point. But there I've got a thread. I've got someone who's got a plan. I want to collect bodies. We'll work out why they want bodies later. Maybe they're a necromancer. Maybe they want an army. Maybe they just want people to taste the cheese. I don't know.
Okay. Could we maybe have it then on the cart, the cheese cart, having some engravings on it of mice and like rats and stuff, like as a little sort of tell to the players if they
that
want
would
to
be
look
cool.
closer.
Yeah, Something like that would be quite nice, yeah.
Because I feel like, yeah, it's all well and good if he's coming up with cheese and like they might be suspicious that he's offering them free cheese, which sounds like such an absurd sentence when you say it. But if you have a natural,
they do this in the supermarkets all the time.
That's true.
Have you never been charmed?
Yeah, it's you got like a little pinion and like a little plate with sticks and cheese.
Happy to help on his chest, yeah. Happy to help you die.
Happy to help, Michael George. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we have a little tell in the cart.
I think if I'm sculpting the encounter, yes, that's the sort of thing. The little detail that would be excellent. If I'm doing it on the fly, I don't think I'd have the speed to do that.
Well, that's what this is. This is
okay. This is encounter creation. I've got a week to plan. Michael George.
Okay. True. Okay.
The
right.
not so Pied Piper. Yeah.
From next week, we're expecting much more then.
Yeah. Sure.
Fantastic. Cool. Yeah. So Michael George rocks up. He's got his cart with cheese. There's a secret compartment with some bodies in it. There's carvings of mice all over it. And he's got an oxen pulling it. Pretty unsuspecting. And he's like, "Yo, people, want some cheese?"
Yeah.
Is that how he talks?
I don't know. I think I go in with like a sort of like a silky salesman-y, "Hey, I'm the cheese peddler, and I want." Oh no, he's French, isn't he? We said before he was going to be French because he's a. So we're going to be like stereotypical and just enough that you'd be able to understand him in English. Like, "Hello, travelers, I would like to sell you that." He's become the Terminator.
It's difficult to do accents, but I feel like if you have a character that has the most ridiculous voice, they're the one the party remembers the most.
Yeah. So he was Jean-Luc Dehaul, and that didn't work. So we're going to bring him back in. Then he's Michael George because that
Michel
was
George.
Exactement.
Michel Georges.
So Michel George, he wants to sell you the cheese. So he comes across and, "Hello, travelers. I have my little cheese boutique, and I would like you to sample my wares. Please, on the house. This is free one for you." And they would intentionally look for like the weakest externally looking one, and that's probably the one with the lowest
gnome
constitution or resistant to I don't know. I think Michel knows his onions and his cheeses to the point where gnomes are hardy, halflings are hardy. These people are resistant to these sorts of things. I think they would know some of these things. They would lean on knowing. Don't try it with the elf. Try it with the human or something like that.
Well, if we're thinking about it from that perspective, I would argue then that as Michel Georges rocks up and he sees the number of like obvious weapons on the party, because I'm assuming there's going to be like at least one martial class person there. Does he go for whoever looks the biggest, like the Goliath or the Dragonborn fighter, or like whoever looks like they're armed and dangerous, and try and knock them out with the cheese?
Possibly. I suppose it depends what Michel's goal is in that moment. For me, it would be trying to collect the greatest number of bodies without suffering any personal harm. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you'd be looking for either an immediate ally, which could be quite good. If you think, I need to capture these people because they are adventurers and they fetch a much higher price, or they are much better necro bodyguards or something like that.
They might have some money on them. Something
exactly.
useful.
It could be all manner of things. So I think I would probably... You know what I'd actually do? I think it'd depend on the session at the time. I don't think I'd plan necessarily who they would go for, because you can't guarantee that they would respond in kind. Mm-hmm. So if you've got like your party face who has decided to converse, I think of any of the people that are engaged with Michel, they would be prime candidates, but I think there would also be a secondary.
Okay. But still the goal is to get everyone to try the cheese, and then they all have to do a con. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think it would probably be just a regular, like, just reflavor the charm person, or use something reasonable. It would either be a constitution for something poisony, mm-hmm. or it would be a wisdom. Can you resist the charms of the cheese?
The charms of the cheese.
That's the name of the shop. Just in case, because there would have to be some sort of effect in play. I think it would be more likely to be enchanted or cursed cheese, mm-hmm. rather than it makes you feel sick and therefore become or succumb.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So
that's how it's starting, and this probably isn't going to go well for Michel. Little does he know in this moment.
No, he's going to get jumped as soon as anyone tries the cheese and falls unconscious, or even at the point of having to make a save. I guess that's the point when the party's like, right, let's fuck this guy up and ask questions later.
That might be a good opportunity for the secrets channel as well. If they like heavily fail the check, because we'd have that Discord opportunity. I think as soon as you take someone into secrets, everyone knows the shit's going down.
Mm-hmm.
But it gives an opportunity for that player to ham it up a little bit, ham and cheese. Yes. So you're, I take them into secrets channel and say, right, you have been charmed, or I might even be that explicit. So you fall under the effects of the cheese. I'd try and describe the way it makes them feel, that there's a wooziness or some sort of deep pleasure overwhelms them, and all of a sudden, Michel Georges is your best friend, and you will do anything for him.
Yeah.
And then back into main chat, and then let them explain, because otherwise you'd have to then say to everyone in the party, they've rolled a check, they've failed a check, they know that something's at play, and it's hard not to metagame in that scenario. So at least this way, they know something's happened, but not exactly what.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I really like the idea that you take them away, you tell them that they're now charmed, and they think the cheese is fantastic. So like you can go back to the conversation. The first thing that happens is Michel Georges says, "So friend, what do you think of the cheese?" And then they,
it's bloody amazing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Then you go from there, and the party's like, "What the fuck? Why is he like so on board with this cheese?"
Yeah, no, try the cheese, guys. No, you got to try it right now. And then all of a sudden you've got an ally in your cheese peddling.
As long as the player goes along with it, which if they're there for fun and not for winning, they should do.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's fine. Let's say you get through 2 or 3 cheese tasters. Someone's maybe a bit resistant. What happens at the point when the party decides to go for him? What the roll initiative point? Like, what is Michel Georges in combat?
Yeah, so I think I would take this down 2 routes in my planning. I would either have them have a battle plan, which could be in the form of minions. Minions are usually quite good because you spread out the action economy. If you've got your party of 6, say 4 to 6 players, and then they've got 1 adversary, unless that adversary happens to be fucking Ultron or something, it's not going to last very long. And sometimes that's appropriate. Yeah. Sometimes you've got to squash the bug. But in this case, if Michel Georges knows what he's doing, they should have a plan. And that plan might be some manner of escape or some manner of defense.
Let's say, given that he's got his bodies, he doesn't want to give those up. Yeah. He wants to get out of there, and he's taken on this party thinking that he's got a decent chance of capturing them all. Let's say he's a pretty tough encounter. What could he be, or what could be involved in this fight to sort of tip the scales a bit more in his favour? Then, I mean, if it's a piper, then we should go some sort of bard and just do like an NPC based off a character sheet.
That would be a starting point, definitely. I think it would be something bard based, but I would also lace them with like potions, ways of buffing, and the idea that they've taken this cheese and they've done something to it. Maybe it's in potion form, maybe it's in magic form, but either way, they're going to have some casting potential. Okay,
so you're saying potions, but what you mean is he's got other enchanted cheeses that do other things, and he just like scoffs a camembert and hulks out.
Yeah, or he eats a Mexican hot and comes out with dragon breath or something. So yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, you could have fun with that. You could have, like, different cheeses. Like, you could imagine he's got a cheese board next to him on his wagon. And you've got a selection of 5 or 6 cheeses. And then you can think of some sort of effect that matches the consistency or quality of the cheese.
And I'd have a lot of fun planning that.
You could. I like the Mexican hot being obviously fancy Mexican hot, because fancy Mexico's a place. Giving him like some sort of breathe weapon, and like every time it's his action, rather than him do something, he eats a cheese, which then has an effect straight away.
Exactly, yeah, and it would just be reflavouring basic spells, but I think that would be quite fun. And so in that case, maybe I would actually make them as a stat block. I'd have them down as a wizard or a sorcerer or someone that has access to a range of spells. I mean, Bard's got a range of spells, but less. I'm thinking more
attack spells rather than support
effective,
spells.
Yeah. Like abjuration-y things rather than support things, yeah.
Okay.
Do you mean abjuration? You know what I mean? Like offensive destruction magic in Skyrim.
Yeah, the sort of thing you'd get from a sorcerer rather than a bard.
Quite.
Yeah. Oh, I like that a lot, though. That's great. So we've got him. He's got he's like a painter with his easel, with his palette. You've got this guy with a cheese board in one hand and his pipe in the other.
I don't know if I'd even bother with the pipe at that point. I think that would be, for me, that would be above him, like maybe two, or maybe that's like the ultimate, the finishing move or something. Maybe he's just like the pipe is the item that calls forth the minion. So if he thinks he can't handle it on his own, he brings out the pipe, gets the boys out.
Yep. Okay, so who are the boys? Are these just the animated corpses, or are they the charmed living people, or are they something else?
What would I do? They might have a couple of... Okay, let's say that Michel Georgie is going to collect bodies between city and city, and you've not long left your city, or whatever it is. There's only a certain capacity in the wagon. Mm-hmm. So unless you happen to be right up next to the final city, the wagon should be empty, such that he could collect lots of bodies. So I wouldn't want to say all of a sudden millions of zombie-esque somethings pour out. So maybe they would have a couple of dedicated bodyguards under charm. The idea that I keep everything clear, but the strongest two from my last raid I keep as my own, and the rest go to the boss.
Insurance policy. So what? They're just laid like corpses in the secret compartment in the back of the wagon.
Yep.
Under a spell entirely, and they just lay there until he needs them.
Yep. Or an alternative would be gaggle of rats, swarm of rats. Swarms of some things. Plenty to go out that way if you wanted, even if that was just forming a distraction or a smoke screen or an opportunity for escape.
Yeah, I mean you could get like a swarm of rats. Like if you were to play his pipe and they just come out of the bushes nearby or the trees nearby or something. Like they're magical rats. They're not real, but they appear as if they've flooded out from the surroundings.
I've got the green Power Ranger in my head playing his like dagger flute and having the fucking Dragon Zord turn up.
Only the dragon is like
might be a step too
group
far.
of small mammals. Well, yeah, that's good. I mean, especially if the parties... I mean, you've got to think about how you're going to do the combat. I mean, in terms of the layout, I guess he's pulled up his wagon by the side of the road. You've got the road, and then it's like generic... there's hundreds of maps on the internet of just a road with a bit of foliage next to it. So that works.
Okay, so maybe let's switch focus a little bit. Let's assume that this is now your encounter. You're in combat. You're fighting Michel Georges. Mm-hmm. How do you make that any more interesting than the six of us try and beat the hell out of them? Like, it's not the most interesting map. Well, okay, maybe that's seeding the thought too much. The map is you're on the road. How would you run that combat? Let's say you've got a roadside, maybe a small embankment, maybe a tree or two, the cart itself, general roadside map.
Okay, so I would say then, so from his smorgasbord of cheeses, he is gonna I'm gonna make sure he gets the first initiative, like because he's gonna get a surprise round because he is sort of ready for combat, he's expecting it, and he's trying to sort of lull people in first and try and gain a bit more advantage. So he's going to be first in the initiative order. And he's going to pull out some sort of cheese that either makes him invisible or makes him sort of teleport at the embankment or something to sort of like physically get away from the rest of the group.
Sure.
So like as an action, he's escaping. Like it's basically the effects of a Misty Step, say, as a bonus action even. And in that same turn, he also calls forth the swarms of rats from nearby. And a few of them make it into combat with a few of the people, nearest the edges of the cart where the trees are, say. And that's like his first turn. So the guys have got, the players have got, they've either got to tackle the rats first or find some way to close the distance on the bad guy.
Yep.
So I think that's probably the first go. In terms of making it more interesting, I think just describing and flavouring the cheeses as he uses them for different effects is like a real plus point for me. I like the idea that maybe the party try to close the distance and try and wrestle the cheeses from him. And then have the possibility that they can consume the cheeses not knowing of the effect. Possibly.
That would be fun.
I also like the idea of like after the combat having the cheese left over, like some cheeses left over. Like say as he falls, he smash them on the floor and like some of them are ruined, but you can scrape together some of the cheese for like a random magical effect or something if they've got some sort of vial or something to put it in.
Oh, you just know some players going like, I want to put these two cheeses together.
That's fine, but you randomly get one of the effects, not both of them. Or I don't know, maybe the enchanted cheese loses its potency after 1d4 days or something.
Yeah.
that the player doesn't necessarily know about. Actually, that's a bit of a shame.
That'd be so disappointing. No, it's quite funny, isn't it? Because they'd eat the cheese expecting some sort of power in combat, and really they've just recovered 1 HP.
That would be funny, but I don't know. Maybe there'd have to be some sort of hint, like the following day the cheese is visibly a different color or smell. Not to give the game away, but sort of put it in them that maybe they need to use it sooner rather than later.
No, that's completely fair enough. But that's a nice idea, because then you've got an opportunity to give some non-casters some spells.
Yes, which is always funny.
They don't know what they're doing, but it gives them an opportunity to do something other than Action Surge.
I really just want to start Googling cheeses and try to pair, like, rather than a wine pairing, a spell pairing for cheeses.
I mean, that's almost the sort of thing you'd write in as like if you're going to try and write an adventure for submission to DM's Guild or whatever. That's the sort of bad guy you'd write, and then you'd have like the magical cheese table at the back.
Yes, fantastic. Oh, I love it. Imagine, right? So let's say that's his bag, and this is where he's going off to the city. And like, imagine he's not the only one. There's like this Cheesemakers Guild, and they're all like secretly wizards, and this is just a front. And they genuinely meet and have a buffet table of different cheeses with different effects, and they like do a tasting to see what people have come up with when they get like have a gathering.
Oh, you know what? I think we've taken that into full-scale campaign. The Wizards Guild are trying to compete for status, and each of them has their own signature cheese. And it's almost like a game of Splatoon or something. So a wizard knows when it turns up in like the newspapers or equivalent that this town besieged by blue vomiting cheese. Like, God damn it. Waldorf has got that city because it's all blue now, so they know that they've lost that. So they're like playing war games essentially by trying to spread their own cheese and who's the most virulent cheese spreader.
I love that. I do, and I like the idea that you could culminate that in like the big get together with all the cheeses, and then if the party's able to surprise them, all the wizards run for the table and start scoffing cheese, and you get some
just
sort of like
spaffing off ridiculous smells.
Like we're under attack, we need to stop them, and they just they just eat all the cheeses and. Unexpected things happen. Like they just like hulk out and start breathing fire, and then you can have any monster and just reflavor it as a cheese wizard.
Yeah. All right. So when you turn up to the event, you've burst in, you've captured one of the wizards, and you've learnt all about their secrets.
Yep.
You then storm into the next great meeting of the Cheesemancers, and that's when they've got all the experimental fun cheeses on the table. So players could eat them. The bad guys could eat all sorts of opportunities. It's basically like the wild magic table. Effectively,
but I think I'd probably put the table away from where the players enter the room, and then like when they reveal themselves or the initiative starts, the first sort of goal of the wizards near the table is they just scoff a load of cheese. Like they just start grabbing wildly, in a panic that they've been discovered. And then you could have any monster, you could have absolutely anything. Like you could have a dragon, say, and just say it's like a cheese wizard that's just like grown in size and starts breathing blue fire. I'm trying to think now, though, right? So if we've got the first sort of giveaway is this encounter with a cheese Pied Piper on the road with his wagon and his rats, and then that sort of the culmination fight at the end is this big cheese wizard gathering in some like secret location. What other things can we have in between? So like if you go straight from one to the end, that's a big jump. If imagine this is the main theme of your campaign. What are the cheese wizard themed activities, events, things can happen between the inception point with Michel Georget and the cheese fest at the end? So
just spitball some ideas then. So it could be that a space has opened up at the table of the great Cheesemancers, and word has been spread to lesser wizards that there's an opportunity here. So it's almost like Great British Bake Off.
Open invitation.
Cheese magic. Yeah, so when you defeat this particular acolyte of the Baby Bell, then you find like the invitation in the bag or something, like we cordially invite you to Cheese Fest 2020 or whatever.
Okay, so this isn't an invitation to the main event. This is sort of like an invitation to a trial event with other potential cheese wizards. Yeah. So he's not even the best cheese wizard. That's why he's doing these.
Not
shitty
necessarily.
errands.
It just so happens that his were low-level spells, but his focus was necromancy or something, or charm or something, which is why most of his game plan was so focused around a particular type of magic. But actually, you would have Basically all the schools of magic, but reflavored in cheese form.
I love it. I think that's fantastic. It opens the door for anything. Like you can have cheese that gives any effect or replicates the effect of any monster. If this is what we can do with no prep, I can't wait to see what we do next week.
I mean, half the fun for me is bouncing the ideas back and forth and letting the silliness spill out. But yeah, I think next week would be an interesting exercise in seeing how our own minds take it, and then you'll be able to see, well, from the same seed, two very different ways, I'm sure, of running something.
Yeah. Well, that was the point, and I think it's the classic improv, like yes and rather than no but. It's like no one's ideas taking control. It's just we're going to take our ideas and smash them together and hopefully think of something funny. Here's like how it would sound if it was taken seriously. Your party has been travelling for 3 days now. En route to the city of Faraway, you have been following the Green Road East, making camp by the roadside each evening. There has been little in the way of other travellers crossing your path. Those you have encountered are mostly tradesmen, hauling wagons of goods back from the city. As the sun reaches its highest point, you begin to hear what sounds like pipe music playing some way behind you. As you all continue, the sound grows louder until the familiar jingling tune is clearly audible. Turning, you see a wagon approaching from behind. The human pushing the cart waves and beckons you to stop. He has dark hair and wears a ruffled black shirt. As he approaches, you see his wagon, ornately carved with images of mice, is laden with wheels of cheese. The trader, Michel Georget, gleefully engages with the party, offering up samples of his wares. Grunk the half-orc snatches up some of his offerings before recoiling away, shaking his head. As he steadies himself, he mumbles, "Ugh, it's a blinking magic cheese, trying to confuse me head." Before you have time to react, Michel takes an orange-coloured cheese with smatterings of green and red spices from a board of assorted cheeses. He swallows and swings his head around in an arc before breathing yellow fire across the party. Rats spring forth from a nearby shrub, biting and scratching, and two burly humans slide out from a concealed compartment in the wagon. Their movements slow and laboured, they bear the insignia of Lord Faraway on their jerkins. You and your companions do battle with the cheese mage and his minions, besting your attackers. Fortunately, you manage to subdue the two Faraway guards without harming them too much. As they slowly recover from the enchantment placed upon them, Snips, the party rogue, rifles through the dead wizard's pockets, finding a few pieces of silver and what appears to be a letter of invitation to some magical gathering? A trial? No, a contest. The Great Faraway Cheese Symposium. The guards, now fully recovered, thank you and offer to accompany you and your companions the last of the way back to the city. Though just lowly city guardsmen, they are certain that Guard Captain Joseph would be grateful for the good deed you have done in rescuing them, and would likely offer you something in the way of a reward. It appears you and your companions now have a few more reasons for travelling so far from home. The city of Faraway awaits. So for next week, Jake.
Yeah?
A roadside tavern. How would you run that?
Oh. That's very open-ended. How would I run that? Okay.
A regular roadside tavern. So we're on the same road as the Cheesemaker encounter. A little bit further down, we hit up a tavern. You can do anything. What does it look like? What are the patrons like? What's going on there? Are there any secret mysteries? Whatever you want.
Roadside tavern. How would I run that? Okay. Give me a week and I'll get back to you.
Nice. And then next week you got to have something ready for me.
Yes.
Nice. Then we'll take it in turns and that's it. Excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, man. No, I'm buzzing for it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so that wraps us up this week. Thanks guys for listening. Whatever platform this is on, please like, comment, etc. Depending, I mean, where I don't even know. whatever it is, where this podcast is, do it, because you're probably one of the 5 people I've told about this, and I'll really appreciate it.
That's it for this week. Thanks for joining us on our foray into the silliness of our particular minds. Hopefully you'll be able to leave a review or like this podcast wherever it is you get your podcasts, and we look forward to ruining another one of your evenings next week.
Yes. Thanks a lot, guys. Catch you next week.